Welcome. You're listening to the I'm Not Dumb But podcast, where we answer the questions you're too smart to ask. Follow along as we try to make sense of topics that might be mainstream but not common knowledge. Today I'm your host, Rob, joined by Caesar.
You.
And, of course, Victor.
What's up?
All right, so today we ask... Can I get a drum roll, please? I'm not dumb, but what is Brazilian jiu-jitsu? So recently, Mario Lopez, you guys remember him? Slater by Saved by the Bell. Won a... Guy was my idol. Did
you like him or Zach?
I was the Zach guy.
That was Zach guy.
I liked Slater,
was
man.
a cool second.
He was just so active. He's always, just, I don't know. That was just more my insight.
It was the wrestling. He did the wrestling team.
It was the wrestling, yeah.
Zach
got
Kelly.
the girl, man. Yeah, Kelly.
Yeah, Zach, yeah.
Wasn't not the girl. There was plenty of girls on there, right? As I got older, I was like, you know what? Lisa was slept on.
Yeah.
And the other one too.
Jessie.
Oh yeah, Jessie.
Also not bad. But tall girls are not my thing, so I'm a Kelly guy.
We all were.
I still am.
I always love Kelly.
So recently, Mario Lopez of Saved by the Bell won an International Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu Federation tournament. So there was an article on Access Hollywood about him, and there was a quick interview. So we'll take a listen to that.
Mario Lopez is a jiu-jitsu champ. The Access Hollywood co-host took home a first-place medal at the International Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu Federation's Phoenix International Open this past weekend. He stood atop the podium after besting the other two competitors of his same belt level, blue, weight division, light, and age group, Master 4. Access exclusively caught up with Mario after his competition, and he told us what inspired him to compete.
I've done a couple of jiu-jitsu competitions, and I always wanted to check off an IBJJF competition, cross it off the bucket list. I always feel it's important to have goals and set goals for yourself, and this was one of mine.
Mario said he's always in training mode, but kicked his preparation for the Open into high gear over the past few months. He also reflected on the excitement and the nerves that came with competing.
Competing's always been fun. I've always liked it, and I always get a little nervous before a fight, but I'm getting more anxious than anything. But I think the thing that you never really get used to, and I used to when I was a kid growing up, wrestling and competing, you got a lot of eyes on you, right? Because nobody wants to lose some kid from Hollywood. But I got a lot of respect from a lot of people saying, hey, you went out there and put it all on the line, and you obviously don't have to do this. And the fact that you're willing to go out there and possibly get choked out and lose, and those kind of things go viral all the time, and you still did it, is, I think, really cool. So just kind of getting the respect from other competitors out there, I think meant a lot to me and was really cool. And the fact that my wife and my kids get to see and makes it special. And that whole community is a great community. I love the jiu-jitsu martial arts community, and there's a lot of respect all the way around.
The Saved by the Bell star also shared what he loves about jiu-jitsu.
The thing I love about martial arts, aside from the discipline and the respect factor, is that it's like physical chess. You're constantly learning and solving problems and trying to figure things out, and I like pushing myself, and even at my age, and that's the main thing when I'm doing this, is showing my kids that even an old timer like myself, you never stop competing in life. You never stop setting goals for yourself. You should always kind of try to strive to achieve something. I'm just a regular guy at the end of the day too, and I want to be able to kind of push myself and compete just like anyone else. And it's an honor to be able to learn from the people I'm learning from and working with, and the fact that they let me compete was a blessing, and I had a lot of fun with it. And I'm sore and I'm hurting a little today, but it was all worth it.
So how old is he?
I think he's 50.
Great Botox work. His forehead did not move.
Didn't move.
One bit.
It didn't move.
I feel so unaccomplished.
You might be.
He's
49. He's just a regular guy
who's been on TV since the 90s. He's just
that's
personal
true.
chef,
That's
and
true.
but not to take anything away from this guy. So IBJJF, real quick, and ADCC. There's a bunch. Those are legit tournaments. They have locals and things like that, but these two are like high end. For him to compete at that level is actually pretty incredible. And at this point, he is no longer a blue belt. We'll talk about what that means. He's actually been promoted to purple, and there's a bunch of other people who are too. But yeah, what he did, not easy. Me starting at 32 years old and him starting at 47 or whenever he started, 46. Mad props to him for that, because it is not easy.
He started at 46.
I think he started in his early to mid 40s or something like that, because I think he's been training for about 4 years.
And
5
he's
years.
already going to like winning legit champions.
Winning legit, yeah.
Damn.
Yeah, he is.
You must put in a lot of work.
Step your game up, Rob. What's wrong with him?
So I just off topic, like I was reading some forums about him, and some guys were saying that they actually train at the gym, and they're like, he rolls with everybody. He doesn't pick and choose. He doesn't act like he's a celebrity. Like, everyone rolls with him. He rolls with everybody. They were like, he's super humble and as legit as it comes. And like,
What is rolling?
so rolling is basically like sparring.
Oh, okay.
So you're you just straight up grapple with the other person. Yeah. So what is Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu? This was something that I didn't really know about. I still didn't even know about myself being a blue belt in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. And at all these gyms, they're all kind of set up the same way. And I never really understood it. Even the imagery and the pictures on the walls and stuff like that. We'll get to that, but they're all kind of set up the same.
Wait, all the gyms have the same images on the wall?
Yes.
It's all
Yes.
roasted meat. It has meats all over the wall.
You're telling me that all these gyms are like McDonald's? You can just go in there, there's just standard
Yo,
stock?
there's something a little bit culty about Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. When you walk into most Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu gyms, there are pictures of old men, old masters on the wall. And it's all the same guys, because Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu really stems from this one family, and we're going to go into it. But when I used to go into these places and drop into other gyms, you see some of the same people on the wall, and I'm like, what is this shrine of people? Who are these people? So I kind of got into the history of it, and now I know exactly what I'm looking at, and a little bit more about the history too. So you guys heard about Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu? What do you guys, have you ever tried it? Have you ever got into it? What do you know about it?
Are there other types of jiu-jitsu?
There's Japanese Jiu-Jitsu, and that's really where it started.
When I was doing a Krav Maga, the class after
I think
that
I
one,
ordered that. Is that the salmon eel roll?
that is with a side of whoop ass. But yeah, they used to, when you were talking about earlier rolling, I thought they used to warm up and like roll on the mats.
Mm-hmm.
I thought when you were talking about rolling, I thought that's what you meant.
Yeah, so rolling is so some martial arts they use a kata, which is basically like if you guys ever did karate as like a 6-year-old, you just kind of do the form, right? You do the punch and the kick and you don't know what you're doing. That's like a synchronized play of movements. But jiu-jitsu uses actual sparring where you try to use the technique with the other person. And when you spar or roll with the other person, that's what they consider it too. Because you're just basically grappling and wrestling each other, and you're, playing your jiu-jitsu game. So that's what rolling means in jiu-jitsu, is you're basically just wrestling.
I did jiu-jitsu for about a month.
Mm-hmm.
I was trying to use it as like a substitution to working out. It just didn't stick. I didn't like it, but I also had my own reasons for not liking it, and it wasn't even the physicality of it. That was actually pretty intense. For me, it was more just like the scheduling. I didn't want to be on someone else's schedule. Mm-hmm. I didn't want to have to be there at 6:00 for whatever. I was like, fuck this. I'm just going to go to the gym whenever the fuck I want.
It's a commitment.
Yeah.
It is a commitment, I gotta say. I mean,
it was expensive for me to just not want to go or go once a week or something.
Yeah,
like
jiu-jitsu gyms right now, especially because they're so popular, they're just getting crazy expensive. Especially in New York City. Well, you have basically like the best of the best in New York City. It's actually incredible when you're in the community to know who's actually out here. And you'll have like superstars come in the community, and they charge like astronomical fees in the city. So yeah, so today we're going to talk about what is Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, more detailed. Like, how did it start? And why is it so popular right now? Right. So I'm going to go over those 3 topics. What is Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu? How did it start? And why is it so popular right now? So, yeah, like you were saying, is there other types of Jiu-Jitsu? Absolutely. This all started in Japan. Really, it kind of started in the 16th century. And Jiu-Jitsu means the gentle art in Japanese. It really stemmed from the samurai class. In Japan at this time, in like the 1800s, Feudal Japan was basically run by the samurai class, right? They called this the Tokugawa shogunate. And what these guys did... Fun
fact for you, the last samurai was actually Tom Cruise.
Tom Cruise.
Yeah, and I understand what they mean. So the feudal lord, these shogun lords, they ran these areas, and like the aristocrats would hire these samurais, right? So the samurais would be taught in archery, they would be taught, and everyone knows, like, you know, sword combat, and they would be taught in unarmed combat. That unarmed combat of the 3 different types of things they learned was called jiu-jitsu. So the actual unarmed portion of the samurai training was called jiu-jitsu. At the time, jiu-jitsu really just meant like some sort of general martial art that they used, right? Because everyone kind of had their own style, and that's just how it was. So they would use like throws and pins and joint locks and trips and all these things, and that was their unarmed combat, and that was jiu-jitsu. Unfortunately, later on, with the fall of with the Tokugawa shogunate and the emperor being reinstated, they kind of basically phased out the samurai class, and in doing that, they kind of disgraced you being a samurai. It wasn't cool anymore. It was almost like looked down upon. When they had all these when they had all this samurai ruling going on, there was tons of locations that taught this type of combat because it was needed, because the samurai class needed to be trained. But with the fall of the samurai, there weren't many instructors around. So a lot of the gyms started going under. So that was actually kind of sad. What was really cool was there was this guy, and he's very, very, very popular in Japan. And he's regarded as like one of the best judo instructors, and he's regarded as creating the best judo gym in Japan. And his name was Jigoro Kano. So what this guy does, he's a young guy. He's 18. He's been bullied all his life. But he was a young guy. He was well educated, and he sought out martial arts because he just wanted to defend himself. But he was a smart guy. So he started educating himself, training at different gyms, and really like flourished in martial arts. And what he did...
All martial arts?
No, well, mainly
or
different
judo.
Styles
of
jiu-jitsu.
Oh, jiu-jitsu.
So at this time, there was no judo. It was just jiu-jitsu. And it was your plain Jane general way of saying martial art.
Oh,
it was almost like kung fu. There's different types of kung fu.
I know kung fu.
I know kung fu.
I ordered that, the lunch special. So this guy, Jigoro Kano, he goes around, he trains, and he gains a pretty good mastery. He started building a reputation for himself, and what he started doing was learning tons of martial arts and going to different instructors. And he did this as almost being an encyclopedia because he didn't want the art to go away. Because all these gyms were closing down and there weren't a lot of places open and a lot of these styles were dying out, there was instructors actually trying to find him to teach them his style, right? So this guy became like this huge figure in Japan for martial arts. By him taking all this info, what he started to do is he created his own style. And what he did was he basically just said, I'm going to use the stuff that I think works, and I'm going to discard the stuff that I don't think we need anymore, right? Because we don't need to learn how to fight in armored combat because we're not really in the battlefields anymore. And he became this figure, and what he did was he took a very philosophical approach to jiu-jitsu. So he believed that jiu-jitsu was more than a martial art, and most of these martial arts believe that way too, right? They kind of say like, oh, it's part of your being, it's part of the Japanese culture.
Very ritualistic.
Very ritualistic, yeah. So when you take jiu-jitsu, right? Ju means gentle, and jitsu means art or system. He said, I don't believe it's an art or I don't believe it's a system. I believe it's something more than that. So he said, I believe it's a way or a path, and that is do in Japanese. So he said, I'm going to create this martial art, and I'm going to call it judo.
That's judo.
That's judo. So that's where we get the difference between jiu-jitsu and judo, right? So Jigoro Kano, he learns all these different techniques. He becomes this symbol, and he creates judo.
Question.
Okay?
Was this when he learned the wax on, wax off?
That's pretty racist.
That was the most racist thing I've heard on this episode so far.
Was that something else?
Yeah.
What about the crank?
His brother opened up a car wash next door. So that's the guy you're thinking of.
My bad.
No. So he takes this philosophical approach and he creates judo. But he does more than that. He creates a school that becomes like the most popular school in Japan. And it was called the Kodokan. And so what he did was he took a lot of emphasis on throwing. He worked on ground game and stuff like that, but he really focused on the throwing portion. And that's where we see judo now. Like if you look at Olympics, it's basically the guys are just getting tossed around. And as soon as they hit the floor, it's over.
I like how the fact that he was like, you know what I'm going to do as a martial art? I'm just going to throw motherfuckers. Like, you know what?
You know how hard it is to throw somebody?
I'm not saying it's not easy. I'm not saying he's not
skilled.
You know
how hard it is to get somebody on the ground. It is incredibly difficult.
I just think it was funny. He's like, you know what? You know how I'm going to win a fight? I'm not going to wrestle with them. I'm not going to get on the ground. I'm just going to throw this motherfucker.
I'm going to throw this guy through the goddamn window.
And the game's going to be over.
He made up an art, and then he goes around, and he's like, yo, fight me in something I just made up.
No.
He's
they're using their styles.
Yeah, so there's a ton of there's other
like, no, you
people.
Can't do that. You can't do that. That's not my rule.
Time out, guys. Time out. Hold on. That's not my rule. That's not my rule.
See, I win.
That's illegal. You got disqualified. You're out. I'm the best, and you're gone. So yeah, by his rules, he created the best gym in Japan. That's a good way of thinking. I never thought of it that way. But it was actually a lot of Japanese people saw the Kodokan and the Kodokan style of judo as like the main style, the stronger style, the staple, the primary style. He called it like Kano judo and he changed it, but that was his thing. And he really focused on the throwing.
He needed a marketing guy.
And that's where the Brazilians really did a good job. So he creates this beautiful style. And this was pretty interesting, right? This kind of goes back to our soft power. You know, Caesar knows about this.
I do.
Caesar's all about the soft power.
All about the soft.
So he creates this style of judo and he goes, well, we got to export this. So they start taking their martial arts all around the world. And there was a little bit of, I guess there was like this Japanese Japo-Russo war, they called it. And it kind of like put the Japanese like on the map. It was like, oh, this little island was able to defeat this large power country. What were they using? Oh, their judo, their jiu-jitsu is strong. So then people in the Western world were like, I want to learn jiu-jitsu. I want to learn judo. So when he changed the name to judo, people still just called it the same. They either called it judo or jiu-jitsu and they used the word interchangeably. There was really no difference. You could say judo, jiu-jitsu, it meant the same thing. It was a throwing, grappling, pinning style of fighting. And everyone in the Western world wanted to learn it. Everyone in Europe wanted to learn it. So he takes his thing and a lot of his students leave and they go around and they teach this to the Americas, to Europe, to South America. Fun fact, President Teddy Roosevelt even studied jiu-jitsu.
Bro, Teddy Roosevelt was a badass.
Yo, when I read this, he was a boxer, big-time boxer.
Yeah, big-time boxer.
Hurt his eye.
Loved to fight.
Hurt his eye. Couldn't really do striking too much. So he learns from this guy named John J. O'Brien, who studied in Japan for like 10 fucking years. They said that when people would come over the house and like politicians and like friends, he'd be like, yo, let's fucking wrestle. Let's grapple. And he would like want to wrestle and grapple with them and everything.
From what I know about Teddy Roosevelt, he had asthma like as a kid, which was why he was into working out, because he was like, I fucking don't want to have this asthma hold me back. He was like doing a speech and got shot and like finished the speech before getting medical attention.
They don't make him like that anymore.
Boss.
Yo, we got to do an episode on this guy, because just the little bit I touched on him with this like jiu-jitsu thing, I was like, this guy's fucking awesome.
Yeah.
This
guy
is
a
awesome.
Badass.
I am the one who knocks.
So yeah, he trained jiu-jitsu. There was a lot of different martial arts going around. There was different styles of kung fu, and there was catch wrestling was very big in America, and Greco-Roman was big too. They were exporting this. All around the world.
They sent their missionaries spreading the good word of throwing people.
Basically. So in the early 1900s, Brazilian Navy contracts out a couple of jiu-jitsu instructors.
So now we're going to Brazil.
So
Brazil entering the game. Let's get on a plane. Get your boarding passes ready.
1908, Brazilian Navy hired 2 jiu-jitsu instructors from the Kodokan to teach their cadets. They started exporting their jiu-jitsu. They're from Japan out, and now we've hit Brazil. They start teaching their people. They start teaching the military branches. There was a couple of these instructors out there. Some instructors were coming over and claiming that they were masters and this and that or whatever. And you got to remember that
before you continue, those instructors never went back to Japan. They stayed in Brazil for obvious reasons.
What are the obvious reasons?
They're obvious.
Is it the all-inclusive hotels?
It's the big statue of Jesus.
Christ the Redeemer?
Christ the Redeemer.
I mean, I would never leave. So you get a couple of these jiu-jitsu instructors, and another big type of martial art that was pretty popular in Brazil at the time that came over from displaced African slaves was capoeira.
Brazilian dance fighting?
Heard of that.
And Brazilian dance fighting, and we know that, right, from Zoolander.
Was it Zoolander?
Nah, I don't know. Was it Eddie Goro? Wasn't he
Who?
Wasn't he in Tekken? Who was Eddie Goro? You guys ever play video games?
Wasn't it Meet the Fockers?
What?
Wasn't it Meet the Fockers?
For what?
Yeah, it was Meet the Fockers.
This is capoeira, man. This is hardcore shit.
So the jiu-jitsu instructors start teaching the Naval Academy in Rio de Janeiro, and they start teaching the Navy military branch and the cadets. Now, when they get to Rio, what they want to do is they start creating some challenge matches in order to gain more followers to increase, their schools. Capoeira being a really popular martial art in Brazil at the time, some of the guys get knocked out. Right? They get knocked out by these stingray tail moves and all this stuff. So Brazil sees jiu-jitsu, but it doesn't know. It knows it's a good martial art, but it didn't fully catch on 100%. So there's still some sort of debate, is jiu-jitsu better than capoeira and all this stuff, whatever it is.
Do those styles meet each other often in today's MMA type stuff?
They did. When we had the UFC, in the early stage of the UFC, there was some capoeira fighters in there.
Against jiu-jitsu fighters? Against
jiu-jitsu, against wrestlers, against savate, this French-style kickboxing. There was. There's still capoeira now. There's some moves that are pretty crazy. I think I've seen some, not UFC, but different styles of leagues of these combat sports, and people do fight capoeira. It's weird. I've never tried it. There's a lot of flexibility and a lot of athleticism needed for it, I think. But the guys who do it are pretty. It's all these spinning and head techniques, and I don't know. It's kind of wild. But the guys who do it, they're pretty legit.
I can barely get out of bed, let alone
Then
spin.
you might not want to do. Have you tried golf?
I'm not rich enough for that.
Yeah, you need a couple more years. So jiu-jitsu starts gaining some popularity in Brazil, Now, an important year for jiu-jitsu is 1914. Mitsuya Maeda shows up in 1914. This guy, absolutely legit. absolutely legit. He wasn't like these other instructors that got contracts to come over. Some of the other instructors, when they went back into the history, they couldn't even find if they were actually did learn at the Kodokan. This guy trained at the Kodokan for like 10 years. Then after that, traveled Europe for like another few years, 5-10 years, and basically was like 20 years of straight martial arts. Started at 18 years old, absolute killer. And he kind of left because his focus was like ground game, grappling, just 100% legit.
So he just shows up in Brazil.
He
badass.
shows up on
Gets up
Brazil.
off the boat. He's like, I'm ready to fuck some people up.
Puts his hands out and just floats right across the water and gets here and goes, I'm home.
Wow.
Yeah. He comes in and he calls himself a jiu-jitsu instructor, right? He comes over with a bunch of other jiu-jitsu instructors, judo instructors, and they start teaching the military cadets. Now, he was a badass, and he really wanted, his whole thing was, I want to establish my name, just like everyone else, by fighting. So he puts out prize fights. I'll give you 5,000 francs if you could beat me. I'll give you 500 if you could last 15 minutes. People come over there and they said that he's just wiping the floor with people. Some very good martial artists and some people who just want to see if they can make a buck, right? He's destroying these people. In Brazil, which was interesting, is a way that they would prize fight was through the circus. So the circus would have like pretend fights, like choreographed fights, like how we have WWE or WWF now.
It's real.
But they would have, well, to you, but no, they would have like these choreographed fights where like, we're going to say who wins or whatever. But then they also ran these prize fights, these combat sport fights. So the circus
Stone
is
Cold
actually
Steve Jiu-Jitsu comes out,
at Barnum Bailey.
smashes a few caipirinhas over his head.
Surprisingly, The Rock is there too.
The Rock is there. The Rock's great
No,
grandfather.
it's literally The Rock.
Oh, okay.
Same guy with the bull tattoo on his arm, the old one, the old Rock.
Give me a hell yeah!
So he goes out here and he's fighting at these circuses. Now, the owner of the circus at one of these circuses, his name is Gastão Gracie. This is where the Gracie family comes into jiu-jitsu. So let's just do a quick recap. Jiu-jitsu starts from the samurai warrior. It's their unarmed combat. Jigoro Kano goes in, takes the encyclopedia, creates judo, and establishes the Kodokan. All these guys that are coming over to Brazil, a lot of them have studied at the Kodokan. They are masters at the Kodokan. They're like 2nd, 3rd, 4th, 5th degree black belts coming to Brazil to teach these military cadets. And on the side, they're trying to establish some followers, make some little scuttle on the side, and do these prize fights. So Mitsuya Maeda comes in here, and he's legit. So Gastão Gracie, who is from Brazil, but he is actually a Scottish Brazilian from Paisley, Scotland. So if you look at the picture, this guy looks like a straight-up white dude. So the Gracie family, it's pretty weird. I couldn't find too much info on Gastão Gracie. Some people call him, he was just a businessman. Some people call him a politician. Whatever it was, this guy wasn't dumb, and he ran this place. So he was holding prize fights.
He was like the Dos Equis guy.
Yeah, like he was just
Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu.
He was a smart, connected, and he had like a bunch of kids. His oldest kid, Carlos, is said to have had tons of energy, and he needed something to do with him. He tells Mitsuya Maeda, can you train my kid in jiu-jitsu? I need him to kind of get this energy out. That is the start of the Gracie family.
He had ADHD.
Yeah, he had undiagnosed ADHD. Yeah. They had no Ritalin at the time.
So they were like, beat people up.
Yeah, here, learn this and rip some shoulders out.
Now, Gracie's a name that I've heard because I've seen all these gyms here in the city.
All these gyms in the city is Gracie. Now we've talked about how jiu-jitsu made it over from Japan, made its way into Brazil, and now we're entering the Gracie family, which is like one of the most popular families synonymous with Brazilian jiu-jitsu.
The Kardashians of BJJ.
Exactly.
What are the Kardashians of, though?
That's a good question.
Sex tapes.
Oh, yeah. That was something else.
So Gustavo Gracie, Scottish Brazilian from Paisley's Cotton. He owns this circus, and he starts having his oldest son, Carlos Gracie, learn from Mitsuyo Maeda. This is some of the things I'm reading. Some of the things I'm reading is saying that he didn't actually learn under Mitsuyo. He learned from somebody else who was taught by Mitsuyo Maeda. But the mainstay idea is that Carlos learned from Maeda himself. So you're basically getting it twice removed, Jigaro, Mitsuyo, Carlos. So he learns there and then teaches his brothers. His brothers all learn over there too. They go on to also be prize fighters themselves. Later on, Mitsuyo finishes up his contract. He moves to another city, and the Gracie family, who trained under Maeda, goes to Rio de Janeiro, and they basically establish the Gracie Academy. And they offer up what's called the Gracie Challenge. So these brothers are learning from each other. They're learning from other instructors who also learned under Maeda. They're learning from other Japanese instructors who came from the Kodokan. And they're just developing this like really good, strong jiu-jitsu. Now this is where the marketing kind of comes into play. Carlos is the first guy. His other brothers, Osvaldo, Elio, there's a bunch of other guys out there. If I'm saying their name wrong, I'm sorry. But his other brothers, they competed as well. From what I can see, Carlos only had one publicly established fight. He might have had a couple, but only one like on the books. But his other brothers had tons. And they also won a lot of fights. A lot of fights went to draw. They lost some, but they won a lot of fights. They're establishing their brand of jiu-jitsu as like Gracie jiu-jitsu. This is our jiu-jitsu. The whole way that they created Brazilian jiu-jitsu is that Elio Gracie, who is just tearing through tons of like martial artists with this Gracie challenge, he was their youngest and their most fragile, weakest brother. So their whole marketing that Carlos did, and he puts out books and all this, is saying that like Elio couldn't do the techniques the way Maeda intended them to be because he wasn't strong enough. Really, this guy was athletic. Small in stature, he was slim, slender, but he was an athletic guy. But he couldn't do the moves the way they did in the Kodokan. They couldn't do the moves the way Maeda would do it because Maeda was a strong, big built dude. So Elio said, what I'm going to do is I'm going to take your jiu-jitsu and I'm going to redefine it and I'm going to change it to where I can just use angles and leverage so weaker people can beat stronger people. And that was the distinguishing factor between jiu-jitsu or judo and Brazilian jiu-jitsu. Leverage. It's important to know, which I didn't know, in Brazil at this time, they had the largest Japanese population in the world outside of Japan. There was like over 1.5 million Japanese people or of Japanese descent in Brazil at the time.
Why was that?
Because the economy was going down and they were all fleeing and they were going to Brazil.
Oh.
Yeah. With all these people coming over, there was a lot of jiu-jitsu instructors and a lot of people who actually taught at the Kodokan. So Elio is beating some of these people. And the Japanese take a certain way. There becomes like this little beef between like, why is this Brazilian guy like learning my jiu-jitsu? So they want to start kind of getting guys over here to basically say that the Japanese jiu-jitsu is a stronger one. The one from the Kodokan is stronger because the Gracie family is trying to say that their school is one of the best schools out there. Now, Carlos is the guy who's behind this as far as marketing. He's putting the papers out. He's kind of marketing and promoting these fights. Elio is going in there as the quote-unquote weaker guy, and his other brothers too, and they're beating some of these guys.
They're showing off.
They're showing off.
They're like, look at this.
They're showing off. Exactly. So Elio's fighting all these guys. Now, these Japanese guys who came over, who were taught at the Kodokan, remember, Jigaro created this style that was heavy on throwing.
Right.
when they came over to Brazil and they were fighting these guys, they were tossing the Gracies around. I mean, throwing them they said that these fights, the guys from the Kodokan would throw them like 4, 5, 6, 10 times in a match. But the problem was that when they got them to the ground, they couldn't do anything. And that's because the Gracies created what was called their guard. So their ground game, their guard was so strong that even though these high-level judokas, which is what they call these judo masters, could get you to the ground, they couldn't do anything to you afterwards. So the fights would either go to draw or they would get choked out. They couldn't compete with the throws.
Why is that?
They didn't have that training, I guess. I mean, that wasn't their game. When Maeda came over, he also was heavy on grappling and ground game also. That's maybe why when he taught them, his focus was highly on that. These guys were just really skilled the Japanese were just very skilled at throwing. The judo really established itself as a throwing martial art. And that's where the difference started becoming, is that the judo started being throwing and the Brazilian jiu-jitsu was more of a ground game. So now you guys seen all these memes, right? Where like, oh, it's a Brazilian jiu-jitsu guy and what is he doing? Just butt scooting over. And I'll tell you right now, in our schools, there's not a heavy emphasis. A lot of butt scooting. Well,
it's like someone breaks into your house. The first thing you got to do is jump onto the ground on your back and then like wait for the robber to mount you.
But as soon as he sits on you, bro, he's done.
He's done. He's getting choked out.
For some reason, it's just not big. Like a lot of the techniques in jiu-jitsu right now, Brazilian jiu-jitsu, you start from the ground. You don't really start a lot of stand-up. And that's why it's freaking hard to put somebody on the ground. That's why I give a lot of respect to judo, because if you think about it, jiu-jitsu doesn't start till you get taken down. So if you're in a stand-up fight with somebody, the fight might go to the ground, and at that point you could do something. But if you don't have a stand-up game, or if you can't take the person down, or if you don't have good wrestling or good striking, it's kind of hard to implement your game.
You hear that a lot in like, if you watch like UFC matches where like the guys will train, they'll have two emphases, which would be like, and this is like from a outsider speaking, I have no martial art experience. You'll see guys that they'll train a lot in Muay Thai and Jiu-Jitsu. And so they'll be like, standing up, this guy is better than this guy. But if they get on the ground, this guy's better at Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. So this guy's going to overtake this guy if they get on the ground. You'll see a lot of that.
Yeah. That is a really good point. And that's honestly why we have MMA. And a lot of MMA fighters now train some sort of grappling, whether they have a wrestling background or they have a jiu-jitsu background. So they might be like black belts in like Kyokushin karate or something like that, or whatever it is, but they've maybe like a purple belt in jiu-jitsu because they need some sort of grappling.
Right. They might not be masters at it because there's some guys that are better at it than others, but then there's some guys that are weaker at it than others.
So Carlos Gracie, they say he was the one that started it, but the fact of the matter is that Elio was the younger brother, quote unquote, the weaker one, the more frail. He had asthma, and he would sit out and watch and teach at the jiu-jitsu gym. And then he kind of established he changed jiu-jitsu to use more leverage. Near the end of his career, as he started really gaining like traction and being very, very, I mean, at this point he was really popular. Remember, Gastão, his father, was connected, and the Gracie family did have a little political connections. The government of Brazil kind of jumped on this bandwagon, kind of like, promoting Brazil, giving a little props there. So they were, constantly saying, oh, the Gracie family's jiu-jitsu is strong, and it might even be better than the Kodokan in Japan, and ruffled a few feathers, as you might say. In Japan, at this time, there's this guy, Masahiko Kimura. So you guys ever heard of the Kimura?
Like the chick from the Guardians of the Galaxy?
Yeah, that's the one. So he hears about this little beef or whatever, and Elio is calling out all these people, trying to gain more followers, they're trying to grow the gym, right? So the more fights they're doing, the more that they can show off that their type of fighting is better. Business is booming for them. Elio calls out Kimura, and one of Kimura's younger fighters says, you know what, I'm going to go, and I'll fight him. It goes to a draw. They fight again, and Elio wins. So now that was like kind of the first time where Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu is like, oh, it's better. It's better than Japanese Jiu-Jitsu.
In a fight, how do you win? When you tap out? Is it a point-based system? Like
these fights that they were setting up, it was timed. Some of them were going for like 4 or 5 hours. But yeah, you stop when someone taps. Now, like IBJJF and ADCC, you get points. So remember, the Gracies established this thing called the guard. You're creating a defensive position from the ground, and then you attack from the ground. So you get the guy on the ground, and then when you have him there, then you can do an assortment of moves where you either strangle the guy, choke the guy, or joint lock him and basically just break a shoulder, break a leg, break a elbow, break something on him. There's different chokes, right? There's air chokes and there's blood chokes, which is different. Have you guys known this? You guys ever been tapped out or no? Knocked out? Anything? No?
Nope. No. I've choked someone before, but with consent. With consent.
I'm sure she liked it. But in jiu-jitsu, you have air chokes where you're actually like attacking the windpipe. That's one thing. That's kind of different. The guy can hold their breath. The guy can move. But there's strangles where it doesn't matter what the other person does. If they don't tap, they are immediately going to sleep. That does happen. Not often, but it does happen at our jiu-jitsu schools now. People just get tapped out. Blood chokes are when you do them correctly. If the person doesn't tap, they're falling asleep in seconds. I mean, almost immediately. The next thing you know, you just hear them snoring, and then the guy's laying down, waking up like, what just happened? It happens pretty frequently in matches now because people kind of don't want to tap, and they think they're okay, and that thing comes right on.
Well, they're just like macho. They're just they want to macho through it. They want to man through it.
Yo, but the thing is, it happens so fast. So when I first started, I got put into a triangle choke.
Yeah, I've done one.
I got put into a triangle choke. I didn't know what it was. So as it's happening to me, I'm recognizing, I'm like, wait a minute. I think I'm in a triangle. And as I'm thinking about what the hell is happening, I just see the curtains start closing. And something was like, yo, you're getting choked out. So I tapped, and then everything opened right back up. Like everything just started going dark. And then you just start to see this tunnel, and then everything just comes right back. It happened so quick that there's nothing you could do. There's nothing you could do. And that's the whole thing. So if you get a bigger opponent in a strangle, I mean, they're out. Like if you put it on right, they're out. Yeah. There's no striking in some of these fights, these jiu-jitsu fights, but they did hold in Brazil, they did hold these what they called vale tudo events, which were no holds bar, anything goes, very few rules, very, very, very similar to our UFC, especially the early stages of our UFC. So Elio won a few Vale Tudo fights, and basically that's how they were establishing their Gracie Jiu-Jitsu. I mean, these guys were talented. They were talented on the ground, and right now their family is continuing to teach like these like really well-established gyms, especially in the city here. You can go to a really good one. So Kimura comes over, and I mean, he tosses Elio every which way and sideways. He gets him down, and he puts him in an arm lock. He goes to tap, and Elio doesn't tap, and Kimura rips his shoulder apart right there and then, and Carlos had to throw in the towel and stop the fight. You got to remember that Kimura was like a insanely well-established Kodokan fighter, one of the best to come out. They said he was actually one of the best judokas to come out of Japan, had amazing technical jiu-jitsu, and he outweighed Elio Gracie. But at this point, it didn't matter. The Gracie family established their jiu-jitsu, and it showed that with all the fighting and all the wins that Elio and the family had and all the promoting that Carlos did, they were still on the map. It didn't matter that he lost to Kimura. And Elio actually, I think, retired shortly after that.
Smart move.
Yeah, it's kind of rough. But what he did do is he had a ton of kids. And I mean a ton of kids. They were saying that he was just creating kids.
It's that heat in Brazil. It's that heat.
And these kids have been training not since 18, not since 15, since like 6 years old. When they get older, these kids turn into absolute killers. We talked about what Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu is, right? We talked about how it started, and now we're going to answer why is it so popular right now. Early 90s, 1991, get your Jenko jeans and your pocket chain, and let's look at the Ultimate Fighting Championship.
Charger Tamagotchi.
Charger Tamagotchi, here we go.
Ladies and gentlemen,
So the UFC starts in the early 90s, Ultimate Fighting Championship. The winner of UFC 1, 2, pulls out a 3, and wins UFC 4 is Royce Gracie, son of Elio Gracie. At his jiu-jitsu style, destroying cats left and right. It established Gracie Jiu-Jitsu, completely blows up in America. From then on, I mean, this thing has just been exponential. The reason why Elio chooses Royce, now, Elio has tons of kids. He's got Hickson, Hobson. I mean, this guy's got tons of kids. I could run through all of them.
Hickson,
He
Hobson.
went down the alphabet.
Oh, so it's funny, right? Because in Brazil, they say their R's as H's. So, like, Royce is actually spelled Royce. So you would read it as, like, Royce, but they pronounce it as Royce. So that's why you ever listen to Joe Rogan and his teacher, the Machado family, they call him Joe Hogan. Their R's are like H's over there.
Joe Rogan. He's like a
he
comedian,
did
right?
Fear Factor. Yeah, they shut that
Okay,
show
the Fear
down.
Factor guy. Yeah.
Jamie, pull that video up.
So let me guess. He picked which one was it?
So Elio picks Royce Gracie.
Let me guess. It was because he's the smallest.
He is the smallest, weakest of the brothers. And he says if he can go in there and represent the Gracie family and the UFC, then all the other brothers, when they come out, and his older brother, who is Hickson Gracie, who is actually, this guy's an absolute killer, and he does come out and do a bunch of LA Tudo fights and UFC stuff too. He says that if Royce wins, it will basically establish that idea of the smaller person using leverage in jiu-jitsu to fight the stronger opponent.
And he's going against like boxers. Like,
Yo, you got to see these guys.
all these crazy dudes, right?
You got to see these guys. So Royce wins UFC against Gerard Gordeau via submission rear naked choke. Gerard studies Kyokushin karate and Savat French kickboxing. Fight was like, I don't even know, 3 minutes.
3 minutes?
Yeah, something ridiculous. 1994, Royce wins UFC 2 against Patrick Smith via TKO submission to punches. So I watched that fight, takes him down in 2 minutes, mounts him, knocks this guy out until his corner throws in the towel. Pretty crazy. Patrick actually was a black belt in Taekwondo, black belt in Kempo Karate, black belt in Hapkido, and I think studied as a purple belt in Jiu-Jitsu. Royce puts him down in 2 minutes, mounts him, punches him until technical knockout. UFC 4, Royce goes in, fights against Dan Severn, known as the Beast, literally. Puts him in a triangle choke. I was an American wrestler. So he's going for his single leg, double leg takedowns. Royce still establishing Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, puts it on the map, and that's basically where we are now. Like, after those early UFC fights, that's what really like established Jiu-Jitsu and in MMA as it is now. And that really goes to what Victor was saying is a lot of these MMA fighters, they study some sort of striking technique, but they're choosing some sort of grappling or wrestling, and it's either wrestling or jiu-jitsu, or they still have Japanese jiu-jitsu. I know some people who study Japanese jiu-jitsu, and it's really a mainstay in MMA at this point.
Guy Royce Gracie looks like Joe Rogan.
It's funny, right? Because they're like, he's the youngest, smallest, or he's the smallest of the brothers. I think that was 6'1", $180. Like, that was the smallest dude.
That was the smallest dude?
Yeah. 6'1", $180, the smallest. But I mean, if you looked at his stature, these guys were coming in just cut up. They looked like The Rock. The guys that he was fighting were humongous people. And he's coming in.
Right.
He fought in the gi. And you're thinking,
it's funny because like we were around for this, but like I remember early UFC, but like I remember not really giving a shit or not knowing what it was because I was too young. But you could imagine watching some dude show up looking to box, and then some dude in there in a gi. You're like, what am I watching? Is this comedy? Like, is this a clown show?
Yo, if you see some of those matches where the guy comes in with like his karate outfit and he does something, and then the wrestler just picks him up and like throws him out of the ring, it is hilarious. Like some of these early UFC fights, and I'm biased to jiu-jitsu, right? Because I do it. But I think a lot of it in the early stages, people didn't know how to really fight against it, maybe. Now everyone's kind of training in jiu-jitsu. Like some of the top MMA guys out here now, like Conor McGregor's a purple belt in jiu-jitsu. John Jones is a studied jiu-jitsu. Like all these top guys, like not only are they doing kickboxing or whatever they're doing,
I feel, and this is completely me spitballing here. I feel that like Muay Thai and like jiu-jitsu are like the top two practices people use before going into these like MMA type fights.
I absolutely love Muay Thai. So I'm a black belt in Taekwondo.
I've taken a Muay Thai class. It's super fucking physical.
Yeah.
Bullshit Muay Thai. So before people get on me, I've taken.
Oh, you took it at like a 6 a.m. class at Lucille.
It was like one of those ones. I wasn't out in like Thailand kicking a tree stump for like 6 hours. Yeah, it was like a class pass.
I did a class pass once. Yeah. I had to leave early though.
And I was late.
Had to pick up my dog from the nail salon.
Hitting a fucking wooden board for 6 hours a day.
You weren't in the forest chopping down bamboo trees with your shins.
Yeah, exactly.
I gotta say, like coming from Taekwondo and training a little bit of Muay Thai, I did that for about a year. Their kicks are totally different. The way they use the kicks, the way they follow through with the kicks, even where they land the kicks are different. I think their style of fighting is pretty good. I do find a lot of like things where I favor in Taekwondo, only because the way the Muay Thai throw their kicks, they come off a little different. I think that maybe you could get the kicks off quicker in Taekwondo, but I truly believe that Muay Thai's got like a stronger kick. I remember I went to a UFC gym downtown near Canal Street, and I went in there. I took a Muay Thai class. I was doing the class, like the instructor, like he didn't care about me at all. He was just helping like the hottest chicks in class, like work on their form. Like I could have walked out of there and he would have never known I was there.
Tackle and grapple.
Tackle and grapple. Tackle and grapple.
Tackle and grapple.
Come on down to Doug Duggart's Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. You will learn to tackle and grapple.
That's exactly what it was like. This guy did not care about me at all. So I remember I'm kicking the bag, doing my thing. I'm just like, at this point, I'm not even gonna follow him. I'm just gonna kind of do whatever I want to do in the back of the class. And I remember I heard this like bomb go off, and I thought that somebody dropped like the weight rack in the fucking gym. I turn over, and there's this guy just nailing this heavy bag. And his kicks were so powerful that every time he hit this bag, like everything shook. This dude's just walking the streets like
with like weapons.
Muay Thai, yeah, like weapons. Like they should put this guy in a cage, wrap him up, and he shouldn't be allowed to go anywhere. But yeah, it was just incredible. Like their Muay Thai kicks were just Really,
I did
really,
a
really
kickboxing
strong.
class. I also had a UFC gym, a different UFC gym. I did a kickboxing class on Fridays, and no one would show up on Friday. It would be 4 of us. It's us and this guy, and he knew Muay Thai. And the one thing I loved about this UFC gym is that, I mean, I don't know if they did this at other gyms. They would put all their Instagrams up on there's a big whiteboard, and they would put all their Instagrams on it. And just at a Kicks one day, I started looking them up. I was like, let me see these. If they put up their Instagram, I was like, why are they putting up their Instagram? They're all fighters. They're all just trying to get their start. They're training. They're teaching at these UFC gyms, doing a few classes so they can just, keep going. Since there was only 4 of us, sometimes 3 of us, he would come to you. Oh, you're kicking wrong. Oh, don't forget to throw your hip into it. Don't forget to do this. Change your form up like this. Fucking amazing. Amazing. I was kicking that bag with strength I didn't even know I had. It was all technique. And he was just trying to teach you to just get used to the movement. It was insane. I loved it.
Did he offer you a package then afterwards? Package of 10 classes?
No, they closed the gym actually after COVID. Before COVID, it actually closed down, and then it just disappeared.
A lot of gyms just ate shit after
That one,
COVID.
the one jiu-jitsu gym that I told you about a long time ago, the one that I used to go to, that COVID took that out. That's no longer there.
Now, why did you stop? What was it that wasn't for you?
It was
I have to know.
the
I gotta
scheduling.
know.
I don't like being on other people's time. I don't like rushing.
But you do have a job.
Are you kidding me? I'm so angry when I go to work. I hate being on other people's schedule, and I'm always rushing, and then my stress is all the way up. I'm in traffic. I'm literally going 100 miles an hour to fucking go to work. It's a high stress environment. I'm going to die very early in my life because of this shit. That was one thing. And the other thing is, which was funny because you told me that your gym didn't do this. They did rolling as a warm-up. And I don't mean rolling in the sense of how you used it earlier. I meant they literally just did somersaults down the gym and back as a warm-up.
That's what
I would get so dizzy
as a warm-up
after that. I don't know if I wasn't doing it right. I think my issue was that when I was in the roll, I just instinctually hold my breath. So I'm going head over heels down the mat. Holding my breath. By the time I was done with that, I was dizzy. I was discombobulated. I didn't feel good. And then we'd start the lesson, and I'm just like,
So basically, you quit because you couldn't get through the warm-ups.
He didn't know how to breathe.
I didn't know how to breathe. And then also, a big thing about me in gyms, if it's a gym where I'm doing these classes or something, if I don't feel like I'm part of the group or the community, I don't bother.
Victor likes gyms where they're in the background. It's a podcast playing about European colonialism.
I like to learn.
If he's not taking about 5 to 30-minute breaks,
I'm taking over
sets,
the PA system at LA Fitness and just playing the daily.
If there isn't a eucalyptus towel in a steam room, I don't even want to be part of this thing. So it's funny that you say that about the culture.
Right.
In jiu-jitsu, you get a lot of people that start, but they never come back. And it's weird. So no one really goes out of their way to meet you or learn you,
bring you into the
about
fold.
you, because the idea is that you're just going to be gone in 3 months when your trial is over. Because the first 6 months, I never wanted to go to jiu-jitsu. I still get my ass kicked every single day. But I would go home just dejected. Nothing I did worked. I couldn't even do anything. Small dudes were just putting me out. Everything I was trying, I was like, what am I doing here? Right? What am I doing here? But then one day you go in and one technique works on one person one time, and you're like, that worked. And then you go the next day and it works again on somebody else, and then you're able to do something else. And that's where you start to really get addicted. You play a lot of chess. I play a lot of chess.
Yeah.
Jiu-jitsu is literally like chess. Literally like, I don't even play chess anymore because the way you play, they call them jitseros. And when you talk about jiu-jitsu, you talk about it as if you're playing jiu-jitsu. A lot of times guys will establish a game. My game in the gi, is one thing I learned was collar sleeve. That was my guard. So I played collar sleeve. That was your defense. So just how you have an opener in white and you have a defensive opener in black, you do the same thing in jiu-jitsu. You establish an opener for offense and an opener for defense. And then you play the variations just like chess. So if I play collar sleeve and the guy does this, well, then I answer with this. And then I might switch to a De La Riva guard, or I might switch to try to get an omoplata or a triangle. There's different guards you play. And it really, really is like chess. So right now I'm working on like different guards and different guard passes, and you just learn those and then you play them for like a month, and then you learn all the variations and you learn the body types. So if I go against somebody who's my size, I know that I could probably get away with something. But I know that if I try something on someone who's bigger, if the technique is not right, I won't be able to get away with it. So you start to learn people, you start to learn their games, and you start to learn what you can do on other body types. People your size, you know this might work. People bigger, you know your game is gonna be different. You can't just play this. You gotta take their back or stay on top or do something. And it really, really becomes a game.
So during the zombie apocalypse, if you get into the ground, it's over.
If I get one of those guys, yeah. I have like a 49% chance. Probably like a 43% chance
it might be an issue.
Not dying.
Because if they bite you, you're done. So.
Yeah, well, time out. No bites.
Oh, you broke the rules.
No bites. Yeah, you got to stop. And can you put a gi on? Because I don't really know how to do this. Can we start from the ground? What was pretty interesting was like when we start with this Mario Lopez thing, right? So Mario Lopez is actually, he trains under Gracie Baja Jiu-Jitsu. Okay.
That's so California, bro.
Yeah, Gracie Baja actually is Barra. Gracie Baja did start out in Rio de Janeiro. My gym, shout out to Team Jacau. What they have on the wall, now I started to know who the shrine of jiu-jitsu is on all the gyms that I go to, right? And usually the first old guy that you see on the wall, Elio Gracie. And then my gym has Elio, Carlos Jr., and then the guy who owns my gym, Jacau. So Jacau learned from Carlos Jr. They said that he did train a little bit with Carlos Sr., but not too much. But so that's actually what that shrine is when you go into these jiu-jitsu gyms, these pictures, it's the lineage of the gym. So what you're learning is you're learning the lineage of the jiu-jitsu you're learning. So you'll see that where it stemmed from. So it could be like comes from Carlos, or it comes from Elio, or it comes from some other guys. What was pretty interesting, and really jiu-jitsu has kind of evolved right now. Traditional jiu-jitsu, some of these old school gyms, they only really like to focus on upper body joint locks and pins and submissions. So they go for these shoulders, and they go for these arms, and they go for these wrist locks, and they go for chokes and triangles and all these things. But they tended to stay away from leg locks. And actually what was funny when I was reading about the Gracie family in Brazil, there was a couple of families who actually came out and said, hey, you're not the only family that learned from Maeda. You know, he taught us too. So there was one family that actually challenged the Gracies and said that we learned from Maeda and we want to establish our family name as well as you guys did. And some of them actually did better than the Gracies. And they lost to leg locks because that might have not been what they were focusing on.
The Gracies lost to leg locks?
Some of the Gracies lost to leg locks. And
never skip leg day.
Yeah, I mean, you only need to you're doing legs every day. Did you walk to the gym?
If there's a full moon out, I can't do it.
Done. Put a backpack on.
Yep.
So they called leg locks, like it was kind of seen as a suburban technique. Like almost now they started creating like their own, you don't attack legs. Like that's like beneath you type of deal. Right now, they're just to bring you current with what's happening in jiu-jitsu is in New York City, there was in Renzo Gracie's academy, there was a pretty elite team of fighters. They were falling under the Renzo Gracie flag, and they trained under this one coach called John Danaher, and they called it the Danaher Death Squad. And actually, I don't know if you guys ever heard of George St. Pierre.
Of course.
Yeah.
Yeah. So George St. Pierre actually trains at Renzo Gracie's, and he was trains with John Danaher. The Danaher Death Squad, there was just a bunch of these young athletes. And what Danaher really established was traditional jiu-jitsu looked down on leg locks. IBJJF, which is what Mario Lopez just won, leg locks were not really used too much. And if they were used at the high level. So what these young guys came out and did, and they said, listen, why is it illegal to attack only half the body? So they specialize in leg locks, and now they're probably one of the predominant fighters in jiu-jitsu at this time. So there's one no-gi pound for pound statistically best jiu-jitsu no-gi grappler is Gordon Ryan, and he came out of this Renzo school, and he actually trained under John Danaher. And these killers were training in like the past 10 years in New York City at Renzo Gracie's. After COVID, I think they left. I think they're all out in Austin now. But that's just to get you current. And what is getting really big in jiu-jitsu now is they have competitions in what's called no-gi. So they're not wearing a gi. They're just wearing like rash guards, like surfer rash guards. That's called no-gi jiu-jitsu. And that's getting really big. At my gym, what we do is we have actually a lot of gyms, what they do is they'll have gi and no-gi classes. So this way you can learn to fight in the gi, and you can also learn to fight in no-gi.
So I think
no-gi.
I thought that was always like just a comfort thing. I didn't know that was just because I didn't know if that was an actual style thing. I always thought as gi as you want to be traditional because it is a martial art and it's very formal in that sense. And then I saw the no-gi and I was like, oh, this must be just because it's like a dress down day. It's like a casual Friday for. That was a casual Friday.
Bring your dog to work day. It's another style of jiu-jitsu. It's very popular right now. It's good in real life application, right? Because let's say you get in a fight with somebody, they're not really gonna be wearing a jacket. You know what I mean? They might not have a belt on, Like, hey, can you put your blazer on? Like, I want to kick your ass. So, and when you're fighting with somebody,
get crazy.
Yeah, you don't have when you fight in gi. The lapel of the jacket is used a lot. So people grab that. You ever seen in a street fight, like just a smash on street fight? What does the guy do? He grabs the guy's collar and he just starts wailing on him.
But it's also the street fights are they're very close quarters. You're not sitting there throwing punches, basically wrestling to a certain degree.
Yeah. And so you kind of want to be trained in both a little bit, because what works in the gi, strangles that might work in the gi, chokes that might work in the gi, you don't have that in no gi. And if you're fighting somebody in the street, you're not going to be able to put the same thing on because they might not have a jacket.
Right.
One thing I learned is when I first started, I would play that, collar sleeve. Well, in no gi, there's no collar and there's no sleeve. So now I have to, in my gi,
opener is completely different.
My opener is completely different. What I like to start playing a De La Hiva, and I like to start playing a butterfly guard. So there's different guards that you start to just like, and you got to remember, I'm very new, and these are just standard basic openers, but you got to pick something that's going to work. And I started now to work on openers that work in both gi and no gi, because I take gi and no gi classes. So it's really different. It's really different. It's a big community, which I thought was pretty cool. So Mario Lopez he trains under Gracie Baja. Some other really famous people who legitimately train jiu-jitsu, not just like threw on a kimono and took a picture. Ashton Kutcher is actually a BJJ brown belt under the Higan Machado lineage.
Yeah, what's the hierarchy of belts?
So the hierarchy of belts for jiu-jitsu is, for the adults, is white, blue, which is what Mario Lopez just won, and purple, brown, black.
Okay.
To get black, when I got my Taekwondo black belt, it took me just under 3 years. To get a black belt in jiu-jitsu, it'll take you a minimum of 10 years.
Sheesh.
Minimum of 10 years of training. Some people, it's very common for them to take 12 to 15 years to get a black belt in jiu-jitsu. When I got my blue belt, it was just over 2 years of training. There's a lot that goes into it. Then you need like another 2, 3, 4 years, depending on how much you're training and how well you're progressing to even get to purple. Purple, I've seen some. I mean, you got to remember, Conor McGregor is a purple belt in jiu-jitsu.
Damn.
So like that purple belt is a high level. At that point, you've learned everything, or you've learned a lot, and then you're starting to really fine tune your game and fine tune the techniques and really focus on like specific points. Brown belt even more so, to where you're getting everything down like really well. The guy who owns my gym, well, they call them professors. One of the professors at my gym, he's like $150, 50 years old, looks like he's 35. Guys are coming in 250, jacked, and he just chokes them out like it's no big deal. It's actually incredible. 100 pounds on you, and he toys with these people.
That's crazy.
So yeah, some more famous people. Russell Brand is a purple belt under
Russell Brand.
Russell Brand's a purple belt in jiu-jitsu under the Hadra Gracie. Jason Statham is a purple belt under Renzo Gracie.
My man, Jason
Joe
Statham.
Hogan. Joe Hogan, black belt under Jean-Jacques Machado. Al Bundy, Ed O'Neill. He is a Modern Family. He is a jiu-jitsu black belt under Horian Gracie, Helio's son.
Damn,
he's a black
you
belt.
would have never seen that.
In Brazilian jiu-jitsu. Yep. Guy Ritchie, black belt under Renzo Gracie. Kelly Slater, pro surfer, purple belt. So there's a lot of guys who are training, famous people who are actually training.
What was Anthony Bourdain before he passed?
He was a blue belt under Renzo Gracie. Okay. He was a blue belt under Renzo Gracie. He actually won some of his IBJJF tournaments as well. Batista, I think, just got promoted to brown belt.
Wasn't Bourdain's ex-wife a mixed martial artist?
I really didn't look too much into it, but yeah, she actually got him into it, and he used to train down here. They said that when he would go like traveling, doing his shows, he would every day would train jiu-jitsu. So when he was going around to all these countries, they would find him a jiu-jitsu gym and he would train there. Well, he was active. That's what I have for Brazilian jiu-jitsu. You guys got any questions? Did I enlighten you in any way?
That whole spiel was crazy.
Yeah, it was pretty interesting. Like, I now know where jiu-jitsu came from. I know what jiu-jitsu means, which is the gentle art. Now I really get why Gracie's name is everywhere. They really established it and made it a thing and marketed it heavily in Brazil. A lot of merit. They fought. They won a lot. And now I know why it's still popular. I mean, the UFC, I remember I was talking some guy and I was telling him, I started jiu-jitsu. And he goes, oh, man. And he was an older guy. Oh, man, that's crazy. Like what Hoist did? And I go, oh, yeah, that's right. You're like, yeah, Hoist Gracie, yeah, UFC. And then now the jiu-jitsu game is just, it's unbelievable. There's so many people into it. It's huge. But what gets me is just like when you're in the community and you see like the all-stars of this sport, and there are a ton of them train in the city. Ton of them. And like it's like it's like you could go and play basketball with Michael Jordan. Like, that's really what it is. Like, you could show up to these gyms, get an instruction from Michael Jordan, who will teach you how to shoot a three-pointer, and then afterwards you get to play like a scrimmage game with him. That's what it is like walking into some of these high-level gyms in the city right now. You're going to watch like a world champion. He's going to teach you a class. And then you're going to slap hands with him, and then you're going to roll with him, and he's going to choke you out 15 different ways. But you're doing it with like the best in the business, and there's tons of them in the city. And then you'll take a break and look over, and it's like ex-UFC fighter, like also training. It's just an unreal thing. Some guys at work, they trained at Henzo's, and they're like, yeah, like George St. Pierre would just stop by. Like, you're just like, what the hell? Like, it's crazy. Yeah, so what'd you take away from this, Caesar?
Super interesting stuff. I like the history. Now I know why there's Gracies everywhere. Literally everywhere. Yeah, man, I wish I could do it. But like, just like Victor says, one, these classes are expensive. The gyms are expensive to begin with. And two, like, you gotta either go super early in the morning or like 5 o'clock, 6 o'clock, like after work. Can't make those. But
Victor, what are you taking away? You gonna sign up tomorrow?
Yeah. No, if they open a UFC gym back up, maybe. But so much things are interesting. I mean, I love the whole evolution of, so starting back in Japan and then moving its way over, and just the thought of that. There's these people out there that just spend their lives mastering these arts, then one day just go, you know what? I need to show the world, or I need to prove this to the world. And then they just travel around showing this off. And it's admirable. And it's just insane how people they make this their lives. And from it, look what we have now. We have an entire culture, or subculture, for Brazilian jiu-jitsu and these gyms, and people like you and just random people everywhere signing up to try it out, and they want to be a part of this phenomenon. It's amazing.
Yeah, man, that was really well said. Like, it was a lot of fun. I always wanted to try it. I tried it. I tell you, 6 months in, I got addicted, and it's a really cool thing. The community is really great. You're constantly learning. I love puzzles and games and chess, and this is literally I don't play chess anymore. Like, this is literally chess. I study this on my off time, and it's really fun. It's really fun. I'm glad to be a part of it, and it was cool. This was a really fun episode to research. So thank you for tuning in to the I'm Not Dumb But podcast. If you enjoyed this episode, we would appreciate if you could share, leave a comment, and subscribe to our podcast wherever you listen. Stay tuned for more engaging discussions and entertaining content in our upcoming episodes. See you next time. Bye.
Deuces.
Later.